So, our first speaker is Mr. Kamkin from Russia. He have also many experience about the policy in Germany and in other regions of Europe. But for us, it's very important to have this expertise about the American influence also in Russia, in other countries, and so. So please, Mr. Kamkin.
Okay, dear colleagues, first of all, hello, everybody. Patrick, a short question. What time do I have?
I think 7 minutes is okay.
7 minutes. Okay, I will be very briefly, just few hours speech, and then you can ask some questions. So, what is American sector, and what are the core issues of American influence in Russia? First of all, me as a Germany scientist, so I study the contemporary situation in Germany. It was very interesting just to compare the situation in two countries, because after 1945, the West Germany was actually occupied by the Anglo-Americans and still is remaining within the American sector very, very deeply. The entire political class of Germany, except probably some parties like Alternative for Germany or the Link, like Sarah Wagenknecht, they are absolutely under American control through some non-governmental organizations like Atlantic Bridge, etc. The first Secretary General of NATO, she was a British, it said to keep the Americans in, it means in Germany, to keep Russians out and to keep Germans down. So the US control over Germany and other European countries was a key feature of the entire period of the Cold War, because Germany, West Germany, was planned to be not only the Patrick, what is the Schauglas in English? Was ist Schauglas in English?
Schaublasen?
Also Schauglas, also Vitrine.
Ach so, Vitrine, ja.
Ja, Vitrine. Also it was a benchmark of Western capitalism. I mean, the West Germany, and also iron forepost of NATO in Europe. And even after 1990, after the unification of Germany, Germany remained within entirely under American influence, especially in terms of mass media. For example, 2015, when the migration crisis was on the highest peak, the German patriots established a term, Lügenpresse, also lying media, describing the mass media under American sector influence. And Russian political scientists and Russian businessmen who tried to establish good ties to Germany, to German political class and business class, they said it was absolutely impossible to build very deep ties to Germany because of American influence. I was participating in St. Petersburg Dialogue Forum 2010, and it was a delegation of Christian Democratic Union, the Angela Merkel's party. And I asked the representatives of the Bundestag, why doesn't Germany establish good ties to Russia in terms of business, in terms of policy, culture? And they said, we cannot give up special ties to United States in order to strengthen our ties to Russia. You see, so deep is the influence of American sector in Germany. Now I'm making a bridge to Moscow, from Berlin to Moscow. Actually, the special military operation, which was started in February 2022, it is only a peak of iceberg. The most important thing is special political operation to purify, to abolish, to annihilate the influence of American sector within the Russian political class. Because after 1990, after 1991, after the collapse of Soviet Union, thousands, hundreds of Western NGOs, so non-governmental organizations, came to Russia, to former Soviet republics, to build up, to establish new political elite, new political class. They took best students from the universities to some projects, to some programs, and they re-educated them. They made them diese Umerziehung, also re-education, rebuilding of the conscious, of human conscious, like it took place in Germany after 1945. I mean West Germany, and now we have a strange situation. The ordinary people, small people like me, we are all patriots. We are all standing together for other Mother Russia. Our president Vladimir Putin, such generals like General Surovikin, so-called Armageddon general, they are standing for Russia. But this middle class of the public servants, of the businessmen, of mass media, they are absolutely in their brain, in their self-conscious, they are absolutely under Western influence. Thousands of such persons, they came out of Russia after the start of military operation because they didn't realize Russia as their fatherland, as their home. They, in their mentality, they were some foreigners, some Americans speaking Russian or British speaking Russian, because all Russian oligarchs, they have a British or Malta or Israel passport. Many Russian top journalists, Western influence journalists like Gordon, like Posner, they also have passports of several Western countries, and they flew out of Russia. But many thousands, they still are here, and they doing their anti-Russian work. In this term, this bringing this American sector under the sunlight is a very, very important thing, and the goal of our today's conference, I think it is just to highlight the influence of American sector, making like probably a Wikipedia of pro-American protagonists in many European countries, because the situation like I described in Germany or in Russia, they are very similar in terms of other European countries. Please note, I'm not against American nations. I'm not against the rednecks, or I'm not against Donald Trump. I'm against the lawyers in New York City who try to establish new world order. I'm against this deep state, and I'm against this attempt to make this a political, cultural, and economic globalization to destroy the normal way of life of different peoples, of different nations and civilizations. The humankind, it's like a forest with many different trees. Every nation means some kind of tree or flower. If we will make just a plantation like banana or just something or like crop, we will see this globalization in terms of economy, in terms of culture, in terms of policy, but this will just kill the whole humankind in the very, very various ways of life. That's why Russia is propagating the multi-world, the multipolar world, where different civilizations are in dialogue and coexistence. Not supremacy of dollar, not supremacy of Wall Street, not supremacy of the city of London, but the dialogue of different civilizations, different culture, and in that is the essence of human being, of humankind. That's why that is actually the goal of special military operation, because the entire Ukraine, it is not only just anti-Russia project, it's anti-human project. We all know about biological laboratories in Ukraine where very, very dangerous viruses were established, including probably also coronavirus. And Americans, I mean, the people who are leading now the policy of the United States, not all Americans, of course, but these people who, like Hunter Biden or other globalists, they try to make some new type of humankind, this transhumanism. They want to destroy the human soul, they want to destroy the human way of life, and they want to just to establish a way of death. that they are actually building a way for Antichrist to destroy the whole humankind. That is a real American sector. Probably this term is not correct to 100%. It's not a really American sector. It's just anti-human sector. Because nowadays the United States is led by the Satanists, by anti-human powers who destroy, first of all, their own nation, their own country. And we see now the United States is just few steps from the civil war. The globalist elite and conservative elite under Trump, they are just preparing probably a real civil war now. And that is a real threat to all nations worldwide. Because anyway, I may be an anti-Americanist, I may be an anti-globalist, but indeed the US economy is the number one worldwide now. And if such country will collapse, that these waves of destruction, they will go around the whole world. And probably that is the goal of liberals, of globalists, of Joe Biden, just to destroy everything. And the special military operation, it just showed, it just made obvious all these plans and all these actions worldwide. That's why this coming out or escaping this anti-human sector, it is very, very important thing, and I think it is only the beginning of our way. Many thanks.
Thank you very much for these impressions, also about what's happening in Russia. It's also interesting for us. The next speaker is Tobias from Germany, because he have also very good informations about what's happening in Germany, what's happening in Europe. Tobias, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. So I will tell some words about Germany. First of all, we have seen basically that Germany is completely under the control of the USA. We have seen this because Germany is not able to even have any own interests or maintain its own interests. So we saw this regarding Nord Stream 2 pipeline. We saw this when our chancellor went to Moscow. And basically, yeah, we don't know what exactly was discussed in this meeting with Putin directly before the start of the special military operation. But basically, yeah, the discussion was probably about why is Germany not opening Nord Stream 2 and what are German interests in future and how it is going to deal with Russia and how it's going to pursue its own interests regarding gas. Okay, so it continues with many other political problems, from the migration crisis to so many other things. Basically, Germany is just a tool of the USA to control Europe. But of course, Germany is getting a bit more freedom within this framework. Or let's say, yes, let's say it like that. How is it done? Actually, the American Secret Service has great influence in Germany, and it basically executes its own influence via the German secret services. So there is a close cooperation between the two secret services. It has been since the foundation, because as some people might know, the organization of Gehlen, who was a Nazi, was then later used by the Americans as a spy network, and so on. And it continues until today. So we have this deep interaction also regarding Ukraine, and there it continues. One thing where we also see a manifestation of all of this is, for example, with the party Die Linke, for example. In the very beginning, it was a very progressive, interesting project, but it was turned around very quickly, and basically, a lot of people probably working for the Secret Service and also ideologically influencing it for it were going into this party so that they can turn it around, that they can influence it in a way so that it will serve American interests in the end. nowadays we're seeing that this party is losing its relevance at all because it cannot maintain an own position. There is no possibility for any German politician basically to have an own position regarding Russia or anything that is going against the USA. So whenever you will say anything against the USA or its allies, namely Israel and Germany, you will be obliterated from the political and also any economic landscape. The media will go against you, and there will be a massive propaganda campaign, of course, instigated by the secret services, but they will not tell it like that. But of course, they will arrange a campaign against you, and you will think maybe it's only the media, but the reality is it's the secret services that are doing this. I can give you another example, which is basically, it was some kind of deep state coup attempt in Austria. First of all, let me explain you. I think one of the weak points of the European Union and European imperialism is, of course, the peripheral states. We can say about, for example, Romania, Bulgaria, and so on. But also, I think that Austria is in some kind of weak point, because there is a tendency for a bit more conservative opinion, but Austria is also completely under control of the German Secret Service again. So basically, there is no real possibility for any opposition in Austria too. But because it's some kind of laboratory for German experiments, you have a bit more freedom than we have. So I think even the letter Z is still allowed in Austria right now. So regarding this, but the reality is also that one very famous thing that happened was the Ibiza affair, I think. And in my opinion, it was basically just more or less some kind of coup in Austria that happened, and it was organized basically by the German Secret Service again. They did it via some, let's say, special organizations, which they say are like cultural organization and so on. And it's very likely that they were sponsoring this whole thing, where they were basically luring the former vice chancellor of Austria from the FPÖ into a trap where he was on Ibiza, and they laid him some kind of trap, and they were faking basically to be Russian oligarchs and trying to give money to him and having private chats with him about, financing his party and opposition. And so basically, this was, in my opinion, an actual coup by Germany against Strache. And so it's some kind of real problematic thing that we have no possibility for real action within Germany and also Austria a bit more. I think Austria is a bit more, but still there is no real possibility for an parliamentary opposition. But despite that, I think there are separatist movements and other things that could be supported, and also opposition within the streets. Despite this, opposition in the streets has been only very few people in Germany since the start of the special military operation. Okay, thank you. That's basically conclusion of everything that I said. We're having limited options in Germany, but we should also try to focus on other countries within the European Union that have a position that is even more anti-American, and where we have more possibilities to act, because our possibilities within Germany are very much limited. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much for this expertise. I've seen that Mateusz Piskorski joined us, so I'd like to give him the possibility to speak. Thank you very much, Tobias.
Yes, hello.
Hello.
Thank you for your invitation. I think it's really important to discuss this issue, and Well, we have another expert and my dear friend and colleague from Poland, Konrad Rękas here. I guess that he has already shared some opinions or can share also some more detailed opinions. Well, our experience, by the way, together with Konrad, is that trying to organize any kind of resistance movement, let's say institutionalized opposition against the American, or to be more precise, Anglo-Saxon hegemony and domination over Poland, which is practically, I think, an avant-garde of Anglo-Saxon influences in Europe nowadays, is something which is almost impossible. I mean, we have a very, I would say, even tragic experience with trying to register a political party. We intended to name the party the Change Party, Zmiana in Polish, and unfortunately back in 2015, when we tried to do that, we learned that our own signatures, which are deemed necessary according to the Polish law to register a political party, were falsified, that we falsified our own signatures. That's very interesting. Then we learned a lot of other accusations, and we finished up with me as the leader of the committee, organizing this party, landing in jail for almost 3 years. So this is the Polish reality. When we speak about Poland, as well as when we speak about the Baltic countries, it's quite similar, I think. We have the harshest repressions. Which you could even imagine. I mean, when it comes to our part of Europe, for instance, in Lithuania, you have quite similar conditions with Algirdas Paleckis, whom I would like to mention here, who got, as far as I remember, 6.5-year sentence. Just for actually for organizing a political party opposing the domination of the Anglo-Saxons and NATO in his country. Practically in these conditions, you cannot organize an institutionalized political force which could participate in any kind of election, even on the lowest level. I mean, even on the level of local elections, it's practically impossible. What is still theoretically possible, but only theoretically, and as for today, because things might change very soon, is let's say organizing some media activities, some independent media activities, but nevertheless, I also represent the editorial board of weekly newspaper, one of the oldest Polish weekly newspaper, published since 1941, Myśl Polska, the Polish Thought, which has been, I mean, its website has been blocked by Polish Secret Service according to the Polish law, just after the special military operation of Russia started. Yes, so there are a lot of other media outlets completely blocked in Poland. Of course, you can access them via VPN, like the Russian media, yes. But I'm talking about the Polish media now, yes. I'm not talking about the Russian media, which are blocked on the level of European Union. I'm talking about the national level here in Poland. So the situation is quite difficult, but well, we have gathered also to discuss the roots of the problem, I guess. So that might be also important. And you know, I have a lot of debates, discussions, even some quarrels with my American colleagues. For instance, lately I have had a debate with Scott Ritter from United States, and Scott Ritter claimed that it's Poland who is trying to drag United States into the war now in Ukraine. Yes, I claim the opposite. I mean, I think that Poland is not a subject of international relations. Scott Ritter is an optimist about Poland. He thinks that we are a sovereign country, or he wants to think as an American about us that way, yes. But actually, as a former member of parliament, I can assure you that even in the mid 2000s, 2005, 2007, when I used to be the member of our parliament, we had very strict control of our legislative process at any level. I mean, every time when something to any extent concerned American interests here, we had a direct intervention and direct campaign of pressure on our MPs by the American embassy, which means not by the Department of State, not by the presidential administration of the United States, but from the level of the embassy. This might tell you something about the level of American influence back in the past times, let's say, in the communist era. We had also interventions from Moscow, of course, but the interventions of Moscow went on the level between the heads of state, between the head of the Soviet state and of the Polish state then, yes? Now, the level is much lower. When it comes to the American influence, you just get a phone call from the US embassy in Warsaw. I mean, if you are a politician of a ruling party, and you get recommendations when it comes to, you know, all drafts of law which are procedured in the Polish parliament. I'll give you some examples. We used to have an ambassador during the times of Trump administration here, Georgette Mosbacher. Of course, he was not a qualified professional diplomat. She was an ambassador of the United States for a few years here, and she didn't hesitate to make public interventions when it comes to different projects of law and draft projects in our parliament, which means, for instance, that there was a draft project of something there in the parliament, for instance, concerning the interests of one of the American corporations. Now, let's give an example, Uber corporation, I mean the taxis, the cabs, yes? So she made a direct intervention, public intervention via the Polish media. This is a law that cannot be accepted by the Polish parliament because it might be detrimental for strategic partnership and relations between our countries. What happened next? You might guess. Of course, the ruling party rejected this draft project, and no one discussed this project anymore in our parliament. So there's a public influence on every political decision which might concern the interests of the United States here. The same goes, maybe to a lesser extent, but anyway, the same goes for United Kingdom, I guess. The level of influence in Poland of the United Kingdom is almost equally big. And well, in these conditions, you cannot talk about any kind of you know, a conscious decision of politicians when it comes to foreign policy, when it comes to Ukrainian crisis, and so on. Practically, Poland is an instrument, and all those actions. Of course, one might say, and our Russian colleagues often say that, well, in Poland you have this genetically inherited ideology of Russophobia. Yes, it's true that some parts of our society and of our political class are deeply into ideologies of the past, of the 19th century, for instance, of the period of Russian control over part of Poland and so on. Yes, but this is not the whole truth. I mean, there is an ideological factor, but I think you don't believe that the politicians from neoconservative or neoliberal camp in Poland are so much into ideological issues. Oh, they are just realizing, from their point of view, it's quite realistic, because they are realizing that without the US support, you cannot function in Polish politics. I'll return for a while, if you don't mind, to the question of the party, which we tried to register also together with Konrad. And that was very interesting. You know, I had a very strange meeting once when we were registering the party. A guy who was formerly connected to the Polish services came. He asked me if we have the license for the party. I understand. Do you have the license? And of course, I didn't know what he was talking about. And only after all the repressions happened and so on, we realized that the question about the license was not so absurd as it seemed at the first glance. Yes, because you have to get the license, and the license is issued by the U.S. Embassy, yes, and different institutions cooperating with the U.S. Embassy. So there's a huge network of influences, very direct, without any hesitation. Even if you look at the official speeches of Polish politicians, leading politicians like Prime Minister lately, you can hear the words about Poland as most loyal and trustful ally of United States. And you can even hear, it was just about a month ago in Washington, when the Polish Prime Minister told that, well, we are the best country to realize the interests of the United States in Europe and the whole European continent, yes. So he even doesn't pretend, I mean, the Polish political class doesn't pretend that, well, by our strong partnership and alliance with the United States, we are trying to realize our national interest and national security. No, they are openly claiming that they are representing the interests of the United States on our continent. That's why, unfortunately, even lately in the mainstream media, by the way, in Austria, we have had a large scandal about one of the political scientists, I don't remember his name, who wrote an article lately that Poland is again something like a Trojan horse, working for the escalation of the conflict in Europe and so on. Yes? So even the mainstream in Western European countries, I think you can agree with me, Patrick, that even the mainstream media or mainstream experts there in the western part of Europe realized what geopolitical role Poland has now, for the moment being. Yes, so just to make a short resume for this short speech, because I will have to leave you. Unfortunately, I have another recordings today, late night. So just to sum it up, well, Poland is not a subject. That is the first thing. When you are discussing the role of Poland in international relations, particularly in the Western policy towards Ukraine, towards Russia, you should take it into account that it's not a subject of international politics. That's the first point. Second point is that there are different networks of pressure, of exerting pressure on Polish politicians. And third, the Polish political class, or at least the mainstream part of the Polish political class, has already agreed to play that role, which means that they are not trying. I mean, in several European countries, in France, for instance, yes, you have even some mainstream politicians which, from time to time, talk something, even if it's just talking about the need of European strategic autonomy. I'm talking here about the French president, for instance, yes. No Polish politician could say something like that, even in a very soft way, yes, because on the next day, he'll be called by the rest of the political class a traitor and a Russian agent of influence.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. And sorry for the mess.
Everybody knows that you are very busy, and thank you for your expertise.
Thank you.
And we continue this dialogue, I think. Thank
you very much.
Anna, to Poland. Next speaker, we go to Caucasus, to Natalia. So Natalia in Armenia. Natalia, can you hear me?
Yes,
Natalia?
yes, I hear you very well, Patrick. Hello.
So, please, you have 8 minutes, not more, because we must...
Okay, yes, I will be very brief.
Okay.
Thank you, first of all, for organizing this conference. It's really a valuable thing to do because we, the front that we represent, we're a minority, so we have to unite and stand up as one front. Hearing the previous speaker, you know, set aside the country that he was talking about, I would think that he's talking about a dictatorship, because these terrible things that I'm hearing, okay, in Armenia, we are probably used to it, because after the collapse of Soviet Union, we underwent a strange transformation of political systems. So sometimes, yes, we did have these strange things happening to political parties or politicians, but we're used to think that Europe is a place where things are much better than in Armenia. And now what I'm hearing and what I'm reading every day on my newsfeed really makes me start reconsidering everything we knew about Europe, or we thought we knew about Europe. No, but let's get back to our topic about this American influence. You know, when we say collective West, we have to understand that this concept of collective West is a little bit vague. Of course, the West is not one uniform structure that is fighting against Russia or post-Soviet Union countries' unification. Of course, there are also different fronts inside the collective West that we're usually talking about. But let's particularly talk about the American sector, because this is what we see also in Armenia after the collapse of Soviet Union. Unfortunately, we were not prepared to combat this influence, because the last decade of Soviet Union were years of some sort of spiritual depression, because leaders of the Soviet Union continued to talk about the hegemony of the communism, but the real life was totally different from what we were hearing in the news. And this is one of the factors that brought to the collapse of the Soviet Union. Set aside the part that it was another deal between the West and leadership of the Soviet Union. But when the Soviet Union collapsed, particularly Armenia, that faced terrible events in Artsakh, this is how we call Nagorno-Karabakh, the part which Azerbaijan claims to be its territory, but which we disagree with. Because from 92 to 94, there's been a war in Artsakh for independence of Artsakh. So for Armenia, the period right after the collapse of Soviet Union was very difficult, because we were in blockade by Turkey and Azerbaijan. We had no electricity, no gas supply, and it was a very complicated time. This is exactly when functionaries from the West, represented mostly by Americans, infiltrated into Armenian mass media, education system, judicial system, and anywhere else they could get into. So today we already have 2 generations of young specialists raised in an educational system which is totally Western oriented. And these young specialists, they call themselves the liberal professionals, but we do understand what is it. They're not liberal professionals, because this neoliberal globalist force that we are facing now has nothing to do with the traditional liberal values which come to us from the French Revolution and so on. This is something totally different, which I personally more connect with. You know, there's a very famous anti-utopic novel called The Brave New World. This is what I call the new liberal globalist values, because in reality, they preach us and they try to teach our young people to forget about all traditional values we have. I'm talking from Armenian point of view, because we are in a geographic situation where for us, maintaining our traditional values is extremely important. In order to maintain our independence and sovereignty and maintain our statehood, we need to stick to our traditional values. Because we have 4 neighbors, 2 of which are directly expressing their intent to have Armenia without Armenians. So no liberal values will work here. And in this situation, I think it would also work for European countries to start working already now, on getting generations educated in a traditional, when I'm saying traditional values, I don't only mean traditional, for example, Christian values like Catholic values, but also good things that we can take from our traditional values, which are called by liberals. These values are always labeled as something anachronic, something that is not useful anymore. We don't need it anymore. You know, we want to have everything systematized in an American way, so that we have protocols for everything, where human attitude has no place, because they all live like robots. When you look at how American ordinary citizens live, sometimes I think that they live like robots, because they're so afraid to break a protocol in any field of their life, that they are no longer, I don't think that they're truly free, even though American presidents keep telling us that their country is the only free country in the world, but this is really not like that. They're not free at all. There is only one more remark that I would like to do. In 2018, when there's been a West organized color revolution in Armenia, they called it the Velvet Revolution, which in reality was a coup and regime change organized by the collective West. We had a visitor from America, Mr. Bolton, who came to Armenia and said that Armenia should reject its traditional restraints and make a step towards a free, liberal world. I think this is a very, very dangerous thing to say for Armenians, because today this position of Armenian government led us to a situation when we open a monument in Yerevan and a foreign minister of Turkey makes a remark that if Armenia doesn't demolish this monument to Nemesis group, Turkey will close its air again for Armenian airplanes. Which means that we have to forget the Nemesis group. This is a group of Armenians who punished Turkish ex-officials who were responsible for organizing the 1915 genocide of Armenians in Ottoman Empire. And naturally that there is a monument to these heroes in Yerevan. And a few hours later, we have an official announcement from Turkey that their air is closed for Armenian aircraft because of this monument. This is what Bolton meant when he said that we have to give up our traditional values. They want us to forget everything about genocide of Armenians. They want us to forget Artsakh because they want to have good relationship between Armenia and Azerbaijan on Azeri conditions, because Azerbaijan is a good partner to EU and to Anglo-Saxon conglomerates. Why am I saying this?
Thank you for expertise, but I think also now Armenia is also a good partner for the Anglo-Saxon conglomerate now, because about the American interest.
Because absolutely, you're right, because we have people who took power in 2018, and these people were brought to power in Armenia by the collective West as a result of a color revolution, just like they did in Ukraine twice, in Georgia. And look at Georgia. Now when government of Georgia, Prime Minister of Georgia is taking a very pro-Georgian position in terms of they refuse to join sanctions because it's bad for the state of Georgia. Do you see the pressure that they are being under from America and from America appointed president of Georgia? Isn't this a ridiculous situation when the prime minister and president of an independent country are in an open conflict between each other? Because Zurabishvili today reacted on news that Russia no longer requires visas from Georgian citizens to go to Russia. Madame Zurabishvili, she was furious. She was saying that this is another Russian provocation because she is a president appointed by the United States. This is very painful because Georgians are our brothers. So what I'm saying, keep fighting. We should be united and continue our struggle.
Thank you very much for these impressions from Caucasus. It's very important also. It's a very important region. Thank you very much. The next speaker will be Regis Trambly from America, because he's not living in America, but it will be an American citizen, real American, will talk us about the American sector. Regis.
Well, thank you very much, Patrick and Dragana, for hosting and organizing this meeting. And I'm especially grateful and proud that you have invited me. I'm already learning so much from all of you. And Natalia, I feel your pain. I visited your country last year to renew my visa. I learned much about your culture, your history, the genocide, and I was brought to tears. I feel all of your pain because what you are sharing about the American influence in your countries. I'm not going to focus on that. I just will say that I'm an independent filmmaker. I'm a blogger. I'm not a journalist. I've been living in Yalta for 3 years, but I began coming to Russia since 2016, returned each year because I did not believe what my country had been telling me, and I had to come to find out the truth. And I decided to live here as a result in March of 2020. I'm only going to talk to you about what I consider the declining influence of the United States of America. And people across the world should take heart in this if they are paying attention to what is really happening in America. First of all, 47% of Americans say the U.S. is losing its influence around the world. 63% of them are Republicans. So there's a political clash here as well, but 47% do not believe that America is keeping its influence around the world. I have to tell you this, I do not recognize the country of my birth. There is nothing any longer there that I recognize. I don't recognize a country with a moral fiber, with a spirituality. There's racism everywhere. Now, here's what's happening in America that many of you know, but I think needs to be emphasized. Geopolitically, America is rapidly losing its influence around the world. In the military, which America boasts is the most powerful in the world, they're having serious recruiting problems. And there are many reasons for this, but I'll give you just a couple. Number one, they've lowered the standards for entry into the American military, all sectors. They are allowing gays and lesbians and transgenders. Now, whether you're for this or against it, it doesn't matter. But the fact of the matter is, it has demoralized the other soldiers, and many of whom are really type A's, and they cannot stand having these other people in the troops with them, then they don't trust them. They've lowered the standards for physical fitness and education. They no longer require a high school education to get into the service. You can only draw one conclusion from this. The American military is severely and seriously weakened. I have to tell you, when Biden pulled the military out of Afghanistan after 20 years and left billions and billions of dollars of equipment and military bases, the reaction in the military was devastating. I have 2 boys in the American military. I'm not happy about that, but they make their own choices. And what they told me is that our country abandoned us. I have a son who fought in Afghanistan. He lost many friends. He is furious. In fact, he just left the military, Special Forces, after 15 years, only 5 years to full retirement. This is important for people to understand. Thousands left because of the mandate for COVID-19 vaccines. This has caused even more problems in the military. Now, I'm going to move on to a couple of other things. I feel this very strongly because I have children and grandchildren and very good friends in America. Many of my friends are activists like me, and they're protesting a $31 trillion debt, which is rising as we speak. The United States is $1.4 trillion in spending. It exceeds revenue every single year. Economically, skyrocketing inflation, price of gas, food, and commodities going beyond what ordinary people can afford. There's high unemployment, millions and millions of people in all of our cities and towns homeless, millions more without insurance. Americans are debt-laden, and most Americans have less than 1,000 US dollars in savings for an emergency. The war budget exceeds $1 trillion annually. When you consider that NASA is public-private, and the public part is the United States military, which is funding most of it. The war budget also pays for all of American security services. It's an incredibly obscene budget that's larger than they claim the next 10 countries combined, including Russia and China. And in America, there is unprecedented income equality, and it's rising sharply every day. Banks are failing. This should give encouragement to all of you and people across the rest of the world, and not just Europe, that America is in decline. I'm just going to talk briefly. In all sectors of the United States and demographics, the country is failing. Educationally, it's failed our students, as has happened across Europe. The infrastructure is in serious decline. Bridges and roads are in disrepair and have been closed off to traffic. Socially and culturally, America is deeply divided like never before. That's part of what I don't recognize in my country. And if you're paying attention to American politics, it resembles a banana republic. The Democrats and the Republicans are dysfunctional. The government is dysfunctional. And I'll tell you this, they talk about corruption in Russia and other countries. The corruption in the United States is so severe through the administrative part of the government, which is the administrative, Biden, the White House. The courts are all bought and paid off, from the Supreme Court all the way down, by the same people you've been talking about. And the Congress, you don't stay in Congress unless you accept bribes. That's a fact. They do not represent the people of the United States. Okay, I'm going to finish with this. It pains me deeply as an American-born person to see what my country has done around the world, and not just in Europe, but it is so severe in Europe right now. I am ashamed when I meet people like yourself, and I meet Russians and many Russian friends, when they talk about America, and I tell them, you're not offending me, I'm with you. And the message I would like to leave with you now is that as a person involved in communication through my films, which have not made me popular in America, through my many over 400 podcasts that I've done from Yalta, it's critically important that we continue to do events like this, where we can bring people together. Several of you have already said that, because what's important now, and it's a fact, this is an attack on our humanity. This is an attack against human nature. It's an attack against religious beliefs and traditional values. And we must stand together in solidarity and not be discouraged by this tsunami of propaganda and lies, which can be summed up as American influence around the world. Thank you so much, and I want you to know that I stand with you in solidarity from the deepest part of my being.
Thank you very much, Regis. It was very nice, your voice from Crimea. Greetings from Austria to this peninsula. The next speaker is from I can say Poland, or I can also say Scotland. So, Konrad, Konrad, can you hear me?
Yes, of course. Just a few expressions, because, of course, in case of Poland, of course, I fully agree with my friend Mateusz Piskorski. And, of course, I have just few thoughts about, well, what is common experience for well, especially Central Europe, but what we also experienced here in the British Islands and in Scotland, which I still hope will be independent again soon, free from Anglo-Saxon, not only American, but also British influence and domination. The first question I would like to focus on is energy. I'm an economist. I work on the energy sector, on energy security questions, and I would like to emphasize a great influence of American politics on permanent now energy crisis in Europe. Yeah? We can observe that this aggregation of energy transition in Europe, and especially in Central Europe, very harsh for German and Polish and other economies, was pushed by well, accumulation of American energy companies, which were definitely interested in increase in profits of energy sector, especially in selling LPG to European countries, and also to promoting nuclear power technologies, which are strongly related to the military-industrial complex in the USA. And on the other hand, I can observe it in Scotland that great investment of American companies in renewable energy technologies in the offshore here in the northwest of Europe. So they play on both pianos. For the Central Europe, it's absolutely devastating, as our economies were and our energy sectors were based on coal mining and gas and oil import from Russia. And now we have to transfer to the American resources and Qatar resources. And for the rest of Europe, equally devastating is all this so-called Green New Deal ideology and climate doctrine, climatism doctrine. So that's the first aspect I would like to focus on. Second is, of course, the military domination of the USA over Europe. In Poland, we have more than 10,000 American soldiers now. Of course, my friend Mateusz told absolutely true, and that it's a big difference for Polish people, this experience now and what we had to survive during Soviet domination over Poland. Well, I would say that even Soviets and Russian Soviet army generals were much more sensitive for the Polish pride and national dignity. We are not told to to celebrate occupation. It was question of some kind of more discreet, I would say that, and now our children have to make the posters how they are happy that we have foreign soldiers on our territory. That's something which Soviets have never done to Polish people. So I would say that is harsh experience. But of course, we have to be sure as well that if, for example, Polish-Russian conflict, which is fact, we all recognize, transformed into the full-size war, these GI Joes would be the first to evacuate to Germany and further to the West, of course, with all this expensive infrastructure, and this retreat would be covered by the Polish army, which is small, and with almost all armament and equipment sent to Kiev. That would be the finest moment of this alliance. And we can observe something quite similar in the British Islands, where is also significant military presence of American army. And of course, which is also very significant, the main nuclear power bases of the British Army and of the American Army as well are located in Scotland and in Wales, not in England. So we can be sure that they try to be as safe as possible, even providing very aggressive and militaristic politics. And well, I have to fully agree with Regis, and a very important element, of course, is culture. American hegemony is not as transparent as it seems to be. It's an element, the transmission belt of the new ideology, not only neoliberal, not only globalistic, but also strongly related to these all new doctrines of the anti-humanism. So that would be definitely something we recognize in climatism, in transgender platform, in woke culture. That's the element which is absolutely extremely dangerous, not only for security of European and not only European nations, but also for the very existence of the human race as well. And the one small element I would like to return to, it's a geopolitical one. Yeah, we have to be sure that Poland, exactly the same like Baltic countries and some other Central European states, well, together with the Great Britain, the United Kingdom, still unfortunately existing, are planned to be the base for the new American European Union, the Union of Beggars, yeah, which are to prevent any attempt to restore European-Russian alliance, European-Russian cooperation on the field of energy, on the field of economy, also to prevent any attempts to progress with the Chinese initiatives for like peace and belt promotions here in the Central Europe. So we are faced with the serious threats for our security, for our identity, for our culture, for our consciousness, and all of them are related to American domination over Europe and over our nation. So the only way we have to act is the main topic of our today's meeting. We have to leave American sector now. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your statement. Now I've seen that our friend Elie have joined us. Elie Hatem from Lebanon. He's the next speaker. Elie, you're ready to speak. Elie? You ready? Okay. I think he's waiting to speak. Elie, you are ready to speak? So then I think the next speaker should be Dr. Dragana Trifkovic from Serbia.
Hello.
Dragana, your experience about the influence of the American sector?
Thank you very much. Good evening, dear colleagues. First of all, I want to praise Patrick Poppel's project, Leave the American Sector. But for now, I think only Mr. Regis left the American sector between us. I want to thank him also for his honest words. I think this project is very important for all of us. The bottom line is that the American sector spread from the West Berlin to the whole of Europe. It should be noted that the Russians voluntarily retreated 1,500 kilometers to the east without firing a shot. Because the agreement of the 10th of relations, which ended the Cold War, implied the redefinition of the relations between the two great powers, the US and the Soviet Union, that is Russia, the demilitarization and democratization of international relations. Promises were made to Russia that NATO would not expand to the east, and no one can deny that today because the transcripts of these conversations have been published on the website of the State National Archives of the United States. What happened then? The US rejected international law and introduced the law of force. So we are now saying here that they did not honor the verbal agreements that they gave to Russia, but they canceled all existing international rules and institutions through the imposed model of democratizations. Russia was economically weakened. We can actually say robbed. Yugoslavia, which used to be a buffer zone between East and West, became unnecessary, and the Western powers applied to it the American doctrine of the clash of civilization, or as the Romans said, divide et impera, conditioned by external circumstances. The war in Yugoslavia began, which took place with bloody conflicts. In 1999, NATO bombed Serbia without the approval of the UN Security Council, under false accusations of violating the human rights of the Albanian minority. The final epilogue was the fragmentation of the territory and the creation of small states which are easy to control from the outside. This process is still ongoing because Western countries strive to further dismember Serbia by separating the autonomous province of Kosovo and probably Vojvodina as well. On the territory of occupied Kosovo and Metohija, the largest American military base in Europe, Bonesteel, was built, and NATO very quickly expanded to the borders of present-day Russia and began deploying missiles and nuclear bombs near the Russian borders. With this, the United States of America placed Europe in the position of a sacrificed target. Organized coups and revolutions, removal of unfit authorities, invasion of sovereign states, militarization, promotion of militant nationalism, organization of terrorist structures have become our daily routine instead of promised democratic paradise on earth. The accompanying consequences is the devolution and destruction of culture, historical and spiritual heritage through the imposed culture of reality show, Hollywood promotion of violence, deviant behavior, moral failure, and complete dehumanization. I want to say that last week, two tragic events took place in Serbia. A 13-year-old boy took a gun to an elementary school in Belgrade and shot 8 elementary school students and school security while injuring several other students. The next day, a 20-year-old man shot 8 young people and wounded 13 others with firearms. Such terrible crimes and the way of violence have not been seen in Serbia until now. What is the cause of such behavior of young people? In Serbia, reality programs are broadcast daily on television with national frequency, in which violence, swearing, insult, primitivism, crime, and prostitution are promoted. Movies and TV television series too. On the internet and video games, everything is also full of violence, as in almost all printed and internet medias. On the other hand, the cultural and spiritual programs are reduced to a minimum. The institutions of the states practically participate in the degradation of the entire society and all values that have been traditionally established. As a sign of the protest against the expansion of violence in Serbia, around 100,000 people came out for a peaceful protest. It was yesterday. And the authorities called all of us who protested against violence hyenas. So the world is turned completely upside down. And where is the solution? I think the solution is to leave the American sector. It is very important to stop such imposed negative tendencies and destruction of society and the collapse of state. And the solution lies in the return of sovereignty, the true values of society, and uniting all people from all over the world on this basis in order to create the conditions for normal development and cooperation, and not for war, sanctions, violence, and degradation. Thank you very much. Patrick? He's not here right now. So I will add something more that I agree totally with Mateusz. The problem is that they want to represent to us that Poland is sovereign state, but we have the same problem in Serbia here. And especially because we can hear that Serbia is pro-Russian. The Serbian people actually are pro-Russian, and you can find that more than 80% of people are supporting the Russia and the Russian military operation in Ukraine now. But our government and our president they are pretending that they are pro-Russian. They're actually under big influence of United States and of England, of course. That is the same problem. So they are pretending, and on the words they are so like supporting Russia, but in the fact they are doing all against not Russia. It's against our interest, national and state interests. For example, we recently have this so-called gay parade in Serbia. We have traditional society here, and we are against this. We don't want this. And the protest started against this gay pride, how they call it. And then our president said, okay, we are canceling this manifestation. But the next day, we are calling him the president of Serbia, Christopher Hill. It's American ambassador in Belgrade. And he came with the words, no, we are not canceling, we will have this manifestation. And at the end, we had this gay pride in Belgrade against our interests. And it was very humiliated that these people who was in this gay pride action was taking films in the front of our churches naked, and it's a very bad. We don't like this. So this is only the one example, and the problem is that not too many people understand this. And also we have the similar situation with Kosovo here, the similar like in Armenia, that the regime is doing everything actually to separate Kosovo from Serbia, And all people, and I can say 90% of Serbian people are against this. They want to keep our province because it's very important for us. We have spiritual roots on Kosovo, and that is like similar with Armenian problem as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this voice from Balkan. So we have Caucasus, Balkan, Russia, Poland, Scotland, and now I like to invite for a speech our guest from Lebanon, Elie. You are now online. Can you hear me? Elie Hatem.
You're still muted, Elie.
Can you hear me?
Hello. Yes. Good evening,
Hello.
Patrick. Are you hearing me?
You're welcome.
Thank you for your invitation.
The last but not least. You are welcome, and you are the representative of the other three countries against the American sector, and you have time to speak because we have a good condition now for you. You have the time for you. What do you want to speak?
Thank you very much, Patrick, again. Actually, it is not, we are not against anyone. We are not against the United States or anyone. We maybe have to start by saying that since long antiquity history, always the states try to protect their interests, and the stronger state or power imposes himself on the others. This is how empires started, and this is how empires were ruling over the world. And this is, for example, the Roman Empire and so the other empires. But of course, the international society progressed and tried to install a kind, I would say, of rules, of regulation. And as we said, not to be very long, even though if I have time, we have to remember that after the bipolarization, we all hoped that the freedom, I would say, will come over the world again. And myself, I was on the western side of the planet. I mean, the world during the bipolarization was divided into two blocks. The Western bloc and the one who was supposed and was called the free world, and on the other side there used to be the totalitarian or sectarian bloc, and it used to be under the leadership of the Soviet Union. And I was member of the World Anti-Communist League, and I was fighting for freedom. And I was the one who was member also of Solidarność, the famous Polish movement who was fighting for the freedom of Poland. And like everyone, after bipolarization, I quickly have been disappointed by how the world changed. I mean, first, as it has been said just before me, the way how the United States were trying to dominate the world, starting with the war in ex-Yugoslavia, and they made, they have done a military intervention totally illegal by violating international law. The Americans were also using and manipulating too many, I would say, social factors in order to divide, to better rule. It has been said just before me, it is divide et impera, means this is how they used. We start with, you said that I am originally from Lebanon. We all remember what happened in the 70s in Lebanon And before Lebanon, it was in Cyprus, when the Americans and the Anglo-Saxon word and power divided the Cypriots, in this framework of this idea of the use of the religion for political purposes. And this is what happened in 1974 in Cyprus, when Archbishop Macarius, the president and Archbishop of Cyprus, he started to be, I would say, at the initiative of a kind of multipolar world with the creation of the non-aligned movements. And he has been sanctioned indirectly through NATO, and I mean through the United States, by making and using again of a coup d'etat against him and a Turkish intervention in Cyprus, dividing the island in two parts, the Greek part and the Turkish part. And this is what happened a year after in Lebanon, when the Americans and their allies, the Israelis, tried to play the same game between Palestinians and Lebanese. And we all remember what happened to the Palestinian people since 1947, 1 year before the creation of the State of Israel, when the Palestinians were deported by the Zionist, I would say, forces, because Israel was not created and they were just Zionists. They were considered, like the Irgun, Leri, and other forces, as a terrorist groups. They deported military Palestinians to some other Arab countries, including Lebanon. And the intelligence services of the United States, I mean, one of the agencies, which is the CIA, started to play that game between Palestinians and Lebanese in 1975. 1 or 2 years later, they failed to make, I would say, a kind of a war between both sides. And then this is how they started to destroy the Lebanese society by playing the game of the communities. I mean, the Christians versus Muslims, the Muslim versus Druze, dividing even the Muslims between Sunni and Shiites. They were trying to play that game, but it failed because the war in Lebanon has been transformed into an internal, intercommunal, I would say, war, because inside each communities, political parties have been transformed into militias. But the Lebanese experience was very important and interesting for the intelligence services experts in studying how to work on these societies. It's before using the soft power, which we will be seeing it later. They tried, to use the, I would say, the composition of the Lebanese society to create a religious war, but it failed because the war was more a communal war than a religious war, because the Christians, especially the Muslims, were very, very little religious. In 1979, we all remember what happened in Afghanistan and in Iran. In Iran, it was the failure, the coup d'etat against the regime of the Shah, with the help of the Americans, because they were thinking that the Iranians with Khomeini will be, after the revolution, after overthrowing the Shah, they will be pro-Americans and they will be used by the United States in order to create, I would say, a kind of a Muslim revolutions in all the Arab countries around Iran. But of course, this project, this political project, failed. In the same time, they did the same in Afghanistan. And we all remember that the war in Afghanistan, the experience of the manipulation of religions for political purpose, was a success for the Americans in Afghanistan, and we also the withdrawal of the Soviet military forces from Afghanistan. The experience of Afghanistan was very important because we have not to forget that the American intelligence services used what we call it the Talibans, and they used also another factor, which is the another group which has been developed little by little, and which it was being called later on Al-Qaeda, with Osama bin Laden. And it is totally obvious that Osama bin Laden was an agent, and was working for the American CIA. With his nickname was Tim Osman, and this is very important to remember that. And this is, we will be seeing it a bit later, after the war in Afghanistan. The use of religion for political purpose was used by the Americans in the states of the Soviet Union, where the majority of the population was Muslim and Sufi, especially Sufi. So they introduced the Salafism, which is an Islamic doctrine totally different from the school of the Sufis in Chechnya, in Dagestan, in Kyrgyzstan, in Bosnia, and Kosovo, and whatsoever. Osama bin Laden was sent to those countries in order to create a destabilization, in order to create kind of conflicts, generated conflicts in all those countries. And by the way, ISIS, the idea of ISIS, of an Islamic state, started in Dagestan with the Islamists in Dagestan, and what we call it the political Islam, which is totally different from Islam, was used in Dagestan, and the idea was to create a kind of emirates, Islamic emirate in Dagestan. And we all remember also what happened in Chechnya, the war in Chechnya. We all remember also what happened in Kosovo and Bosnia, where the American intelligence services tried to put an community, again another community, starting with the Serbians and with the Catholic Croatians, and then with the Bosnians versus Serbians, in order to destroy a kind of any alliance between Serbia and Russia. And we all remember the military illegal American intervention in Kosovo. And this was totally unlawful. The people who were fighting, the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, they have been sent to Bosnia to fight there. And those people, they are the same who have been sent later on to Syria in 2011 in order to overthrow the regime and to destroy the institutions in Syria. In the same time, the Americans were using the same formulas in order to create an international phenomenon which has been called the political Islam, especially based on the event of what we call it the attack of the 11th of September 2001. And unfortunately, in Western countries, which is under the diktat of the United States, the domination of the United States, the mainstream media, even in the universities and whatever, we are not allowed to think or to try to think or to read what is against the what it is supposed to be said to the people, what it has to be introduced in the brain of people regarding some events. If not, they will be telling you that this is a theory of the conspiracy. This is a theory of of plots and whatever. And we have just to point out the consequences of the events of the 11th of September. We remember that, of course, there were like 3,000 people victims of those attacks, but in the same time, compared to the 40,000 or 50,000 victims of the car accident in the United States, this is how the American intelligence services think that can be justify some other, I would say, advantages to the United States. And this is how the United States intervened in Afghanistan. Again, this is how the United States used the 11th of September attacks in order to also to invade Iraq with false motivations. The 11th September, the 11th September attack also was very helpful to the United States with all this controlled system all over the world. All our movements, our phone calls, or our transactions are totally watched by the United States, directly or indirectly, for the official reasons of fighting money laundering, of fighting terrorism, searching people at the airports, watching all our movements. And this is how the international society has been developed, and we are living in a kind of fear of talking freely, of thinking freely. And this is why I say that we are in a sort of a dictatorship without a visible dictator. We are feeling like the same way how people used to feel under the sectarism, the totalitarianism word before the end of the bipolarization. And that's why I have been personally disappointed by this word with this lack of freedom of transactions, freedom of speech, freedom of even thinking in another way than the one imposed to us. And as I said, they will attack you if you try to think something else, as you have a conspiracy theory. But at the same time, I remember 2 or 3 days ago, a French TV called LCI, and with what happened in Moscow with the drone over the Kremlin, they were saying that this might be an act done by the Russians just to justify a military operation. They are allowed to say it, but try to say that the 11th of September was also an act produced by the Americans or the American intelligence services in order to let the Americans interfere in Iraq, interfere in Afghanistan, to control the whole society. The whole society was under the domination of the United States. As it has been said before, also international public law was not anymore applied. It has been always violated. And this reminds me, the former Secretary General of the United Nations, late Boutros Ghali, and who was totally under pressure of the United States of America, especially of Mrs. Madeleine Albright, when he denounced the genocide, the massacre, and the slaughter, I would say, of the town called Qana in south of Lebanon. And she forbidden him to contest or to criticize this Israeli acts by written. and she told him, you can do it only orally, verbally. And then he said, no, I will do it both. And then she told him, this will be the last written text for you in the United Nations. And since that time, Boutros Boutros-Ghali were always saying that the Americans wanted from me a secretary, and I was a general, because he was General Secretary of the United Nations. And since that time, the United Nations failed totally under the domination of the United States of America. The Americans are distributing today, and since the end of the bipolarization, sanctions to all powers, to all states who are not supposed to be their allies. And in the same time, there will be no sanction to those countries who are the allies of the United States. I'll give you one example. Cyprus, who became in 2004 member of the European Union, is occupied by Turkey, who is the ally of the United States and member of NATO. And it has been condemned, this operation of 1974, by resolutions of the United Nations. No, Turkey had no one sanction by the United States, by the United Nations, and even by the European Union, while the Cypriots, Cyprus, I mean, this island, a part of this island is occupied by Turkey, which is not member of the European Union. In the same way, there are over 1,000 resolutions condemning the occupation of Palestine by Israel from the Security Council of the United Nations, from the General Assembly of the United Nations. The last resolution is the resolution 77/247 on the 30th of December 2022. Israel did not receive not even one sanction from the United States of America. Why? Because Israel is an ally to the United States of America. This is how the international society has been under the total domination of the US. Do I still have time, or?
Yes.
Do I still have time?
I like to say that we are on the end of our conference, but I like to have a statement from you, because you are also the last speaker, and so I like to have a statement from you about the solution of this American influence. How have we possibilities to stop this influence, these activities from America against these sovereign countries? What is the solution? What do you think?
We are starting the solution right now indirectly. You know, all the empires have an end. Now, we already agreed what's happening in Ukraine. Personally, I'm against war and I'm against violence. But the positive side of what's happening now in Ukraine is that the world is changing. We are in the beginning of we are at the end of the periods of the unipolar world, and we are starting a new era in the international relations with a multipolar world without this American domination, because we are assisting to the emergence of new countries. I mean, those countries exist, but I would say new powers on international scene, and they have a will to overcome this American domination. And this is what I always call it, and why I say this is the new free world, because the ex-free world, the former free world, became a world under totalitarianism, under the domination of the United States, under the diktat of the United States, and the ex-free world is becoming the real free world. I mean, the people, the countries, the states of South America, those countries, also the whole countries of the African continents. We have China, we have India, we have Pakistan, we have North Korea, we have the Middle East, including the Arab countries, Saudi Arabia, Gulf countries. We have also we have Iran, we have Russia, we have a big part also of the European countries, even some of the countries who are member of the European Union, who are willing and waiting for the time to, I would say, to leave, to get ahead this domination, the US domination. And I'll give you one example, the last declaration of French President Macron, who pointed out that we have not to be anymore under the US domination. And he was, a couple of years ago, he was pleading and he was underlining the fact that NATO has to change, and he was like under coma. And we all remember also how he was, threatening the United States to withdraw from NATO when the Anglo-Saxon war, because we have to underline that America is today the leader of the Anglo-Saxon world, like England used to be before. And Macron said that we had a crisis between France and Australia terminated some contracts signed with France under the American pressure. And this led President Macron to declare that we need to go to withdraw from NATO. And I think that we have Greece, we have Hungary, we have so many other countries inside Europe who would like to leave and to go to freedom again and to recover, I would say, their freedom, especially with new institutions. Today, we have a new development bank in Shanghai, which is totally outside the United Nations. And I can tell you one thing myself, as a former advisor of former Secretary General of the United Nations, Boutros Ghali, I can confirm that the United Nations today is similar to the League of Nations before the Second World War. And we need to change, to restructure this organization, or to create another one, the one of the new free world of all those countries, all those populations, all those nations, all over the world who are really thirsty for freedom. And we are the majority today of the world. And when they say that the international society, when they talk about this international society, what is today this international society? It is the United States of America and some of its allies, especially those Anglo-Saxon states like Great Britain, like Australia, like Canada, Japan, because it's totally under the US domination, and South Korea, and some of the member states of the European Union. But the majority of the nations of the world are not anymore under the US domination. The only big domination today used by the Americans are the GAFAM, and we have to find out a way to get rid from this internet, I would say, or this virtual world dominated by the United States, because today I can confirm to you that the dollars and the American banks are facing serious problems. This led the Federal Bank of the United States to give loans to the banking system or sector of over $12 billion to support those banks, because we all know that the relationship between the United States and Saudi Arabia are very bad, and Saudi Arabia is having a very good relationship with Chinese and forwarding China with oil and with gas. The gas is more forwarded by Qatar to China and the others. And of course, Russia is today on the ground. That's why we have to focus and to work on this new free world who is starting to be created, and we have to be all together, you know, to support, I would say, the resurrection of the international society based on law and based on respect of international law.
Thank you very much for this analytics. I think Mr. Kamkin like to say something. 1 minute, Sasha.
Yes, colleagues, first of all, many thanks for the great reports and inputs. Just to continue the thesis of the Zionist power, a small historical example connected with Austria, a history of Kurt Waldheim, the former UN Secretary General. Under Kurt Waldheim, the UN issued 2 resolutions against apartheid in South Africa and Zionism in Israel. It was 1975. Afterwards, there was a massive mass media campaign against Kurt Waldheim. Some so-called witnesses came and said, "Oh, I saw Waldheim on the photo. He was commanding a special troop who killed some Jews, some partisans in Italy or on the Balkans." They published some documents. After several years, after Kurt Waldheim retired from his position of UN Secretary General, it became obvious that these texts were faked. I mean, the documents under his fake signature, because the script of these typing machines, the design of the script was after World War II. And so it was just a fake, it was just a propaganda campaign, mass media campaign against him, because he had enough civil courage to say that the Zionist regime was actually the same as the Nazi regime in the Third Reich. So the influence of American sector is much more than just geographically in the United States. The 99% of the citizens of the United States, they are just hostages of this anti-human regime of the globalist elite, who wants to bring in the entire world, the entire humankind, to the Armageddon. That is the most important thing we need to, and we need to explain that topic also to the citizens of the United States, because they are just full of this propaganda of the bankers and economic supremacism. So in the 20th century, there was a racist supremacism, but now we have this economic and this gender supremacism. And actually, we have as a main enemy not the population of the United States, but just a very small shift of the political and mass media elite who try to bring all the nations against each other just to make a third world war where the entire humankind will struggle against each other.
Okay, thank you very much. So
sorry, Patrick, if it's possible, 3 minutes. I will be. Yes. I just want to thank Mr. Hatem for his speech. He knows a lot about this topic and about Islamic topic, and I just wanted to say that I finished master in security and terrorism, and my topic was the fighters for Balkans in the ISIS. So this is also very important topic for me as well. And I'm also very well known about the Palestine and all Islamic world. We have problems now that only, I think now in this situation, the only Muslims in Bosnia and this one in Kosovo, which are not too much religious. They are very much supporting United States of America, because they get everything with the support of Americans. and that is a big problem for us. And I wanted to say also, because Regis wrote his sentence about this 11 September. I remember that once I started to speak about 11 September in the at the faculty with my professor, and he said to me, "You cannot speak that this is not a terrorist act, that there is some conspiracy behind this, because I will not consider you as an expert. I will consider you like this." That I'm speaking these terrorists of sorry, of conspiracy theorists. So that is why they don't allow to speak something, not to speak, just to ask the questions and to ask, but there is something it's wrong in this. It's not allowed at all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. To everybody, we all should leave the American sector. You can see the card here. So it's very important. I think everybody on this conference have this card. They received it for me. We will continue our work, and this video will be published, and there will be many articles about this conference and about the different statements of this conference. So, and we try to organize such a conference in 1 month or more. So we like to continue our work against the influence of the American sector. And this was the first step, because this was the analytic. It was the fundament for our work, is to see what's happened, which different topics are interesting for us, and we can try to find solutions against these different advances of the American sector, because we see this is not good for us in culture, in economics, in politics. The influence of the American sector is very dangerous for people in the different countries. Thank you very much for everybody join our conference. We keep contact, and I wish everybody a nice evening. Thank you for your time and your participation.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yes, Patrick, many thanks for the arrangement of this exciting conference, and everybody have a nice evening, and see you later.
See you
Bye.
soon again.
Bye.
Same to you all.
Bye.
See you soon in Lebanon.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Bye. Greetings to Armenia. Greetings to Germany. Greetings to